as well. That is to say, on different modes of transport, on the routes available, on the dangers involved, and, where it has been possible to determine, on the weather. In doing so, I hope not only to have provided a more three-dimensional portrait of Machiavelli the man, but also to have illuminated more brightly the roots of his thoughts, the reasons for his actions, and the extent to which, for much of his life, his fate was affected by vast sweeping events quite beyond his control, and often beyond his comprehension. The second consideration concerns completeness. Although Machiavelli is best known for Il Principe and the Discorsi, I have endeavoured not to privilege any particular texts, and, as far as possible, to take the full range of his writings into account. This is intended to have two effects. On the one hand, by giving ample consideration to his plays and poems, his letters and carnival songs, I hope to make apparent the full richness of his personality, the vivacity of his imagination, and the bawdiness of his humour. And, on the other hand, by removing the privileged status accorded to texts like Il Principe, I believe it will be possible to examine the meaning and importance which Machiavelli himself attached to them at the moment of their composition, without the baggage of presupposition. For similar reasons, I have also tried to give as exhaustive an account of Machiavelli's actions as I can, reconstructing his movements day by day, even hour by hour, as the evidence permits. This has, I feel, allowed for a more detailed understanding of his motivations, his doubts and his fears, especially at moments of high tension. On a few occasions, it has also made it possible to recognize how frequently he could change his mind, and how great were the uncertainties under which he sometimes had to labour. The third, and perhaps most important consideration, is contingency. In writing this book, I have been acutely conscious that direction is something a person's life acquires only in hindsight, and that events frequently unfold in an unexpected and unpredictable manner. Rather than succumb to the temptation to read Machiavelli's past through his future, as it were, or to ascribe to him a foresight which he may not have possessed, I have therefore treated each moment in his life as it was lived, and only as such. This will, I hope, allow for a searching and realistic assessment, and a fuller appreciation not only of his successes, but also of his many failures, disappointments, and shortcomings, the latter of which have sometimes been overlooked or minimized. No biography, however, is ever perfect. There are inevitably some gaps in our knowledge, some lacunae in the evidential record, and while I have attempted to fill them as best I am able, I must acknowledge that, like other works of its kind, my reconstruction of Machiavelli's life, thoughts, and motivations is at times a matter of informed speculation. I am conscious that not all will agree, and that, as the frontiers of our knowledge are pushed back, the views I have expressed will most likely be challenged. Yet if this book can impart a small fraction of the pleasure I have derived from writing it, and perhaps even inspire others to delve more deeply into the life of this most remarkable of men, it will have more than fulfilled its purpose. Lyon, June 2019. Part 1. The Pygmy, 1469 to 1498. 1. Inauspicious Beginnings, 1469 to 1476. On the 3rd of May 1469, the Via Pisana would have been thronged with travellers making their way from Pisa to Florence. It was always a busy road, but now that summer was approaching and the river Arno was becoming too shallow to navigate by boat, it would have been more crowded than usual. Apart from a few ragged journeymen and the occasional pilgrim, the majority of those plying its route would have been farmers from the surrounding countryside, or merchants on their way from the wharfs. Some would have been herding animals, others would have been carrying foodstuffs, from the beans and tripe that are still the mainstays of Florentine cuisine, to aromatic spices imported from the Near East, and richly woven carpets from Persia. Others still would have been driving carts or leading mules, laden with the wool and silk on which Florence's economy depended. For all of them, it would have been a difficult journey. Although the Via Pisana followed the course of the Arno for much of the way, the terrain was